great. If not, please stand up and worship with us. We would love to worship our King, and if you would join us, that would be amazing.
Amen. You guys can have a quick seat for me as I share a few things coming up here at New City Church. Thanks for joining us today. Happy Labor Day weekend. Unless you're working tomorrow, then just happy Sunday to you. Also, I don't know if this is true or not, but I wear this like neck gaiter mask thing, and so when you take it down, it looks like a really fancy scarf to me, like kind of hipster going on right here. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes me feel kind of cool. But anyway, if you're new with us, if it's your first time or you've been here for a couple of weeks, just want to say thanks for joining us this morning. I'd love to connect with you after the service. You can meet me at our Connect table in the lobby. You can fill out the Connect card that's in the seat back in front of you. I will trade that for a Chick-fil-A gift card, and I even can give you a quick tour around the space, take about 10 minutes after the service, and answer any questions that you might have. I'd love to do that with you. Now, there's a few things coming up here at New City Church that you'll want to be aware of. Firstly, this Saturday at 5 o'clock is the ordination service for our very own Adam Pickard. There we go. And we are really excited about that. Everybody is welcome, and so if you do not have plans, we'd love for you to join us right here in the auditorium on Saturday at 5 o'clock as we ordain Adam and pray for the church plant that is coming in the next few months. So we're really excited about that. Mark your calendars. Also, in the next couple of weeks, on September 20th, so 2 Sundays from now, we are kicking off community groups again. If you're not in a group, this is one of the best ways to get to know people, to grow in your relationship with Jesus, and to build friendships that will help you do that. We have groups that meet on various nights of the week, and so if you're interested in groups, you can sign up and get more information online at newcityrdu.com/groups, or you can meet me at the Connect table, and you can share your name and email address, and we'll give you all the information that you may need. But those are coming back in a couple of weeks, and they're really awesome. Also, lastly, on the September 20th as well, we are having an online partnership meeting. So if you're a partner here at New City Church, you'd want to tune into that. Or if you just want to know what's happening around New City Church, we'd love to invite you. It'll be just online this time. It'll be on our Facebook page and YouTube channel at 5 o'clock. It'll be about 30 minutes or so. We're just going to be sharing how things are, where we are financially through this year, through COVID, some changes that are taking place, and how we're going to continue to push our mission further, which is to help people meet Jesus and grow in a relationship with him. And so we just would love to share with you where we are as a church and what we're up to. And so Sunday, September 20th at 5 p.m. on either our YouTube channel or our Facebook page, you could tune in and hear all about the awesome things that God is doing as we continue to serve him faithfully. So that's all I have for us. If you guys want to stand, and we'll continue to sing with the band.
Well, good morning, everybody. I want to start this morning by telling you a story, and I need to give a little bit of a disclaimer first before I tell the story. This story is incredibly embarrassing for me, and at the same time, it's also super adorable. So you're going to be on like a roller coaster of emotions here. But I want to tell you the story of how I met my wife, Brittany. Already getting you. So I'm 31 years old, so I don't know how many of you grew up in like the sort of late 90s, early 2000s, and are familiar with something called AOL Instant Messenger. Okay, thank God. Thank God I'm not the only one. Or as we call it, AIM. So there's not many things I can contribute to, like things that like really radically changed my life, but AOL like radically changed my life. Like I owe so much to the makers of Instant Messenger. And the reason for that is at that time, I was like the biggest introvert on the planet. Like I didn't talk to anybody. If there's like a spectrum where like over here is extroverted, over here is introverted, I was like in Durham, like whatever's that direction. Like I didn't talk to anybody. I had friends just because I had friends growing up, and so they just allowed me to continue to stand near them at church and stuff. And so I didn't talk to anybody. But then Instant Messenger came along, and I was like, I can talk to people without having to talk to them. And so I would go to like church and stuff and hang out with friends, and just, by hang out, I just mean like stand kind of in the group, and then go home and just like get on the computer and just like go to town. Like I was telling jokes. I was like the coolest. Like I didn't have game in real life, but like online, I had some mad game. And so we had these things back then called chat rooms, where a group of people would get together in a chat room and just like all talk in a group. And our youth group, it seems kind of weird now, but like our youth group at the time at church had its own like chat room. So we would all be in school, we'd go home, and everyone would get on from their own home and like talk to each other. And so that was what I did every day after school. And I remember one day, this person came in. Everyone has like a screen name, you know? It's not like your own name. It's like a screen name you made up. And if like you were cool, it was a band name or lyrics from a song, I think is pretty much what you used. And we were in there, and then this girl comes in, and the screen name by the name of B-Ball Chick 22. I was like, who is B-Ball Chick 22? I don't recognize her. And I want to take a pause from the story right here for 1 minute, because this is a little bit of a tangent, but as a staff here at New City, every week we get together to kind of collaborate on messages and talk through it with each other. And I was talking through this, and Adam, who's on staff, if you're familiar with Adam, he just started like busting up laughing. I was like, it's not that funny. What are you laughing at? And he's like, I just remembered what my screen name was in middle school. So this has nothing to do with the message, but I just want to share it with you. Before I share it, though, I want to show you a picture of middle school Adam. So here's middle school Adam, and his screen name at the time, got to prepare myself for this, was hello, with a bunch of O's, hello, ladies. This might be an embarrassing story for me, but at least my screen name was never hello, ladies. So it has nothing to do with the story, but if I'm going to be embarrassed today, I'm going to take everyone down with me. That's my goal today. So that was that. But anyways, back to the story. So B-Ball Chick 22, we start talking, and I realized that it's this girl named Brittany Wheatley, she's like a hot, popular girl in church. So we start talking outside of the chat room, and I am like, I had so many good ideas when I was a kid. And so I came up with this idea. I was like, I'm never going to have the guts to talk to her in person, but maybe I can get her to talk to me. So it might be a little concerning that I was willing to be this like manipulative as a kid. But I told her, we started talking, and I started to tell her, like, I don't believe you know who I am. Like, we're talking online, but I don't think you could pick me out of a crowd. And she's like, yes, I could. And I was like, all right, prove it. So the next week, she came up and talked to me. And so it answered all my prayers. I didn't have to do anything. She came up and talked to me. Now, we discovered down the road that we actually knew each other from when we were younger, and my mom was her Sunday school teacher. But at this time, we hadn't put those pieces together. So we keep talking. Eventually, I ask her out. And I'm not pathetic enough to ask her out online, but I'm also not brave enough to do it in person. So I asked her out over the phone. And she says yes. So we start dating, or middle school dating, where we weren't allowed to go on dates, but we would just kind of go to movies with groups of friends and sit next to each other. And so we started doing this, and which that's my sweet spot, because you're not allowed to talk, but if you go, you're counted as social. So I was movies all day long for me, and so we went, and we'd be sitting in the watching movies over and over, and I realized that there was something that I was so incredibly nervous to do that I didn't foresee coming, and that was to hold her hand. This is where it gets embarrassing. So we'd see movie after movie, and I'd just be not focusing on the movie whatsoever. And the whole time in my head, just like, just do it, just hold her hand, it'll be fine. And if it's not fine, it's fine. Like, just do it. And just movie after movie, I just couldn't get the guts to do it until one day we were seeing the original Pirates of the Caribbean, circa 2003. So we were sitting there, and this whole movie, I'm like, okay, today's the day, we're doing it. And it's like scene after scene, I'm just like, okay, now. And then I'm like, no, not now, this is a bad scene. Or like, this is a like romantic scene, she might get the wrong impression, I gotta wait a little bit. And so eventually I'm just like, I'm yelling at myself in my head. I have no concept of what's going on in the movie. And finally, I'm just like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm like counting down in my head, I'm like, okay, 3, 2, 1, go! And like, I grab her hand, and like, it was great, and she didn't like run away repulsed. But what happened, which I didn't foresee coming because I wasn't paying attention, is, and this is no exaggeration, this is exactly how it happened. I'm like panicking in my head, all right, let's do it. I reach out, I grab her hand. The moment I grab her hand, boom, credits roll. I was like, what? Like, I finally get the guts to do it, and I hold her hand at the moment that the movie ends, and then everyone gets up, so I have to let go. So now, I'm the weirdo who waited until the last second to hold my girlfriend's hand, then I had to immediately let go. I'm like, man, she is done with me. It was awful. Now, thankfully, she wasn't done with me. We continued to date, and we've been married now for almost 10 years, and yeah, that's right, yeah. And it only took like until the 3rd year of marriage to try holding her hand again. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I still haven't done it. But it's funny now looking back because that story sounds so like ridiculous to me. Like I was holding her hand. Like who cares? What's the big deal? But at the time, it was such an impossible task to me that it was just this thing where I was so far in my head, I couldn't wrap my mind around it, and I was so nervous about what would happen. And it was truly like, at the time, as silly as it sounds now, it was truly like an impossible situation. And that's what we're kind of dealing with today, and the question we're going to be looking at is this. It's what's your impossible situation? Like, what's the thing that's going on in your life that it just seems like it's this hurdle that it seems like there's no way to get out of or get around? Maybe you're facing something, in these times of COVID, something like financial issues or unemployment, where it's like, I feel like I'm doing everything right, but I'm still stuck right in the middle of it. Or dealing with marriage issues or addiction issues, where it's like, this thing seems like I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And so what do we do when we're faced with impossible situations, and how can we kind of turn to God during these situations is what we're going to be looking at today. Well, if I haven't met you before, my name is Brian. I'm on staff here at New City. Today we're going to be continuing our look through the book of Exodus. So we're going to be in Exodus chapter 2. If you have a Bible near you, can feel free to get it out and turn over there with me. And if you don't own a Bible at home, there's a black one in one of the seat backs in front of you. You're welcome to take that one home. Is our gift to you today. But this morning we're going to be looking at a story. And it's a story that if you grew up in church, it's a very familiar story. And so what I want to do is I want to challenge you, similar to, we just finished the book of Jonah a few weeks ago, and Dylan said this at the beginning of the book of Jonah, and I think it applies here, to, as best as possible, try and forget all of your preconceived notions about this story that we're about to read. We're about to read about the birth of Moses, and if you're familiar with this story, especially from like Sunday school or from being a little kid, I think we can kind of get the wrong idea of what's going on here. So as much as possible, I challenge you to try and forget your preconceived notions of what's going on here. And I'd also like to say, if you're here and you have no idea what I'm talking about, if you're like, who's Moses? What is this story that we're about to read? And I think you're actually in a better boat than a lot of us, because you can actually look at this with fresh eyes and don't have kind of these childhood stories that are clouding your view. But to give you a little recap of where we are thus far coming out of chapter 1, we have the Israelites that are living in Egypt, and they're growing in number. So the population is growing, and the Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, wants to do something about it. He's like, they're growing too fast. We want to make sure we control them, so we want to do something so they don't continue to grow. So he comes up with 3 solutions in chapter 1. The first was slavery. So they enslaved all the Israelites, thought it was fine, but then he saw that the population still continued to grow. So the second solution he came up with was they have these the midwives. They're these Egyptian women that helped the Hebrew women deliver the children. And he told the midwives that as you're helping them deliver a baby, if you see it's a boy, I want you to kill it. So immediately things are getting like really intense here, and time goes on, and he sees that the population is still continuing to grow, sees boys that are growing up, and so he brings in 2 of the kind of head midwives and asks them, what's going on? Like, I challenge you to do this, why isn't it happening? And their response, I think, is kind of hilarious. They're just like, well, these Hebrew women, they're just too vigorous. Like, they're just cranking out babies like a Chick-fil-A drive-through. Like, we can't keep up. We show up, and like the baby's already like knows his name and doing taxes, and so that didn't work. And so the third solution that we read right at the end of chapter 1 is that he makes a kind of ruling or decree to throw all of the baby boys into the Nile River. Now, what's interesting about this is this sort of ruling didn't just go out to the Egyptian soldiers or army, but it went out to all of Egypt. And this wouldn't have been like today where a president kind of makes a decision and some people are for it and some people are against it. But the people then would have seen Pharaoh as a god. So he would have made this decree and it would have been enforced by all of the Egyptians. So that would have been enforced by the slave owners, by just the people that were living in Egypt. And so all of a sudden, these Hebrew women that are having baby boys have to live in this state of constant fear. Because obviously they wouldn't abide by this ruling on their own. They wouldn't just, as they have a boy, just toss him in the Nile. But they have to live in constant fear that someone is going to find out that they have a boy, tear him from their arms essentially, and kill him. See, before we even get into chapter 2, we can see that this isn't a feel-good children's story. This isn't just like a nice little story that we tell our kids, but this is like a really horrific event that's going on here. And so this morning, we're going to look at a story of what one woman did with her baby boy, and we're going to pick it up in chapter 2, verse 1. And it says this, starting in verse 1. It says, "Now a man from the family of Levi married a Levite woman." Now, if we pause here, this little tidbit here is actually really important, but it's important for reasons that we're going to get into down the road. So what happens is the people from the tribe of Levi, or the Levites, are who end up becoming the first high priest, and Moses' brother Aaron actually ends up becoming the first high priest. But that's something that we'll get into later in the book of Exodus, so kind of just put a little pin in that and remember it for down the road, but we'll get back to that. Picking up in verse 2, it says, "The woman became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and when she saw that he was beautiful, she hid him for 3 months." Now, this is a kind of I think beautiful is kind of a funny translation for this because, and like a surface reading, you can read it and be like, well, what if he was ugly? Like, you'd be like, oh, we'll try for another one. But the word that they use here is better translated as healthy. So once she saw that he was healthy, that he wasn't going to die in childbirth, then she hid him for 3 months. And in verse 3, it says, "But when she could no longer hide him, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with asphalt and pitch. She placed the child in it and set it among the reeds by the bank of the Nile. Then his sister stood at a distance in order to see what would happen to him." So as a baby, Moses is put into this basket and placed in the Nile River. Now, if you've ever read this story to little kids or seen kind of videos that depict it, a lot of times it can look like this really adorable scene, like little baby Moses, he's got his favorite little blankie, and he's put kind of next to this babbling brook that just kind of lulls him to sleep. But that's not what's going on here, and I worry sometimes that we can kind of have that image in our head and forget the magnitude of what's going on here. Because the Nile, obviously, is not a place that's safe for a baby. If you think of it like this, I'm from Michigan, and so I'm not sure if this is as big of a thing down here as it is up there, but during the summer, we would a lot of times we would like to spend our days going tubing in the summer. Now, tubing can mean one of two things. It can mean either being pulled behind a boat, like a fast boat and in a tube, or it can mean what we often meant it to mean, which is you get rafts, you get an inner tube, you sit in a river, and you float. And you float until you're done floating, and then you go home. And it's just a way to chill. But the Nile is not a tubing river. The Nile was this huge, intense river that was clearly no place for a baby. Now, I'm a geography nerd. I like to think that in a different life, I would have taken all of my random facts about geography and become like a geographer, or whatever you do with it. But so I pulled out some facts about the Nile. So I don't know if this will be interesting to you, but it's interesting to me. So just kind of give us a picture of what we're looking at here. The Nile is the longest river on the planet. And it empties into the Mediterranean Sea. So it's not like it's flowing into Falls Lake. It empties into the Mediterranean Sea. And its output is 6.2 million pounds of water per second and 680,000 gallons of water every second. So you might think is that big? It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around numbers that are that massive. What does that compare to a normal river? And so I thought I'd show you this image to kind of bring to light what we're talking about here. So this is the Nile River. I'm just kidding. This is Niagara Falls. I want to see if you're paying attention. So this is a picture of Niagara Falls. Growing up, we used to go to Niagara Falls every year. It's one of my favorite places to visit. But this is there's two different falls. On the Canadian side, this is the Horseshoe Falls, the bigger one, the one that you usually see pictures of. And flowing over Niagara Falls is 681,000 gallons of water every second. So flowing over the falls is 681,000 gallons of water every second. Flowing from the Nile into the Mediterranean is 680,000 gallons of water every second. And I know like one is obviously going over a waterfall and one's just flowing into the sea. So it's not a perfect comparison. I just want you to see like, this isn't a place for a baby. Like that's the gist of what we're getting at here. And even if none of that was true, if you just look at the animals that are common in the Nile, then we have things like hippos. We have things like the Nile crocodile, not a regular crocodile, but a crocodile named for the Nile. So the Nile crocodile, and something called a tigerfish. Now, if you're like me, you're like, what in the heck is a tigerfish? So I looked it up, and this is a picture of a tigerfish. Ugh. And if you Google tigerfish, the first like Google question that pops up is, do tigerfish eat people? And you know what the answer is? Sometimes. Like, and so this isn't, and look, like I get, these are things about the Nile now. This is a long time ago. So I'm not trying to say this is exactly what it looked like then. But I think we can agree that without even trying to be over dramatic, that this isn't a place that a baby would be safe in. And even if none of that was true, even if this was just a little tubing river that was perfectly calm, at the end of the day, it's still a baby. Like we have a son, his name's Theo. He's going to turn 1 in a couple weeks, but he loves to swim. He loves to go in the water. He loves to splash around, and we have a raft that we kind of put him in when we go to the pool. But you know what he likes to do if he's not being held in the water? He likes to do this. Like he likes to just shove his face in the water because it's just fun. And so regardless of what the river looked like, this is a baby that was alone in the water. So this is an insanely dangerous situation. But the point is that Moses' mother didn't place him in the Nile because it was safe for him, but she put him there that though it potentially meant almost certain death, being put in that situation was safer than being home under her protection. Now, can you imagine for a moment being in Moses' mother's shoes and trying to make that decision? I try to think of a way to illustrate this, but nothing could really capture the magnitude of what we were talking about. Having to decide that your baby is safer afloat in a river without you than being home where you can see him 24/7. Now, as we're reading this story, the Hebrew word that's used to describe this basket is a word tebah, T-E-B-A-H. And what's interesting is that word is only used one other time in the Bible, and it's used to describe the ark, Noah's ark. And so what we're going to see here is that Moses is essentially another Noah. Little spoiler alert, but he will end up being delivered from this watery threat that he's in. And just like Noah, it will result in a new beginning for God's people. So the original readers would have read this and immediately known that this was a story of deliverance and a story of hope, even though it's in the midst of a really intense situation. And that's the first point that we're going to get to this morning. It's this. It's that God will deliver. It's that this is a story of deliverance, and at the end of the day, God will deliver. See, Moses is faced with a truly impossible situation. Like, as a baby, there's no possible way for him to control his outcome in this situation. But what we're about to see is that God will deliver. God will deliver Moses from his impossible situation, just like God will deliver you from yours. And as we keep reading, we're going to see what that deliverance can look like. So if we pick up in verse 5, it says this. It says, Pharaoh's daughter went down to bathe in the Nile while her servant girls walked along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds, sent her slave girl, took it, opened it, and saw him, the child, and there he was, a little boy, crying. She felt sorry for him and said, "This is one of the Hebrew boys." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Should I go and call a Hebrew woman who is nursing to nurse the boy for you?" "Go," Pharaoh's daughter told her. So the girl went and called the boy's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child and nurse him for me, and I will pay your wages." So the woman took the boy and nursed him. So here's Moses' mother, probably thought she would never see her son again. Now all of a sudden reunited with her baby for a time. And Moses is obviously the main point of this story, the main focus of the story. But I think we can take a second and try and imagine everything that Moses' mother went through in dealing with everything that's going on. See, some of this is reading a little bit into the text. Not all this is laid out, but prior to this, she was pregnant. And I don't think there's any way to point to the fact that she didn't want a boy, but you have to imagine throughout her entire pregnancy, she was nervous. She was nervous. What's going to happen if I have a boy? What am I going to do? How am I going to protect him? And then she has a child. She sees it's a boy, and she immediately she can't spend much time being joyful. She immediately has to go into protection mode. Immediately has to go into panic mode and has to worry if anyone's going to find out she has a boy, what's going to happen. And then she has to make the decision that it's better for her to put his life at risk than to keep him at home. And then after all this, she ends up being reunited with him even just for a short time. I can't even begin to wrap my head around what Moses' mother went through in this shorter time. And we'll see what happens next as we close out this section if we just look at verse 10. It says, when the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses because